before Ricky yells at me. There you go. I want to thank everybody for attending our Board of Aldermen meeting today for North Topsail Beach. It is Wednesday, October 4th. I'm going to kindly ask everybody to make sure their phones are on silent during the meeting. And I am going to move to the invocation because we've called the meeting to order. So Alderman Fontana is going to give us the invocation.
Bless this town and may it remain a beautiful and friendly place to live. We pray that the board makes fair and informed decisions this morning and this afternoon. We also pray that our police officers, firefighters, and members of the armed services here and around the world remain safe as they risk so much for our security. We also pray for that our town be spared the ravages of hurricanes and other natural disasters, and that everyone associated with the town remains safe and secure. Amen.
Amen.
And the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so the next item is the approval of the agenda, and I am aware of two items that we've been requested to add, so I will bring those up and see if we have a motion to amend the agenda with those items.
Do you want to have a motion to approve the agenda and then we discuss?
Yes, please.
Motion to approve?
Second?
You need to amend the agenda.
If you're contemplating amending it,
Yep.
I think those should be put out.
Done
and then
first, okay.
You approve if those proposed amendments are accepted, you would move to approve the agenda as amended.
Okay. So the two items that have been requested to me would be, one would be the ability to host a candidates forum here at Town Hall on October 28th with details to follow. The second would be for Mr. Chris Gibson to give an update on the North End flooding assessment from his experience and his last trip out there.
Madam Mayor, I would also like to add an agenda item. We'll call it staff directory. And it pertains to the item we're going to discuss under wetlands management and fee structure, but it's not a part of that discussion. It's a staff directory. So it should come after the point in the agenda where we are B part 2.
I would make a motion to adopt the two proposals that the mayor put in, but not Mayor Pro Tem's addition.
For the purposes of discussion, I will second that motion. For the purposes of discussion,
Okay,
we
so,
need to know more about
Exactly.
this item that you're proposing.
That's to you, Mike.
Mike. Yesterday, the board received a
it's on. He just needs to speak up more.
All right, yesterday the board received from me a suggestion that we notify the permit holder and the property owner anytime an oceanfront lot or wetlands adjoining lot is going to have construction, that the property owner who is responsible for those lots, that property, be notified that the property owner is responsible. We're trying to be proactive, not to be punitive, but we have pretty stiff fines, and we don't want the property owner 2 or 3 months down the line from now knowing, well, I didn't know there was a $10,000 fine because my contractor disturbed the dune or my contractor disturbed the wetland. So this is just a staff directory. So when the permit is issued, that the property owner is also notified about the property owner being responsible for protecting the wetland or protecting the dune, depending upon which their property might be.
So my thoughts on that, and then certainly people can disagree, but the property owners get copied, as far as I'm aware, on the permits that get issued. So it could be as simple as just including a fine fee structure in with that process. So if you're talking about process, I think this is something that we could work with Alice and the staff on, and I don't think it's a board decision on how they want to relay that information.
I'm going to probably say the same thing you just said, Mayor, and using different words. I think we're veering off where this board belongs and what its purpose is, and we're wading into the managers and a department head's lane. So I think, I get what you're trying to do. I agree with it, but I think giving our manager a bit of rudder guidance on this is probably all that needs to happen.
Well, we've already sort of done that by my discussion right now, so I'll withdraw my amendment to.
And just for clarification, he was talking about a directive. I thought he said directory. I'm like, why are we having a directory? You meant directive.
Directive.
Right,
Exactly.
okay. That's where I was confused. I'm like,
Okay,
we're gonna have
sorry.
a directory? All right. So, yeah,
I
agree.
withdraw
Mike, I agree with you.
I
That's-
withdraw my amendment to the agenda.
I believe, Madam Clerk, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the motion on the floor is to amend the agenda with the candidates form item and update from Mr. Gibson
Under new business.
under new business, which would be D and E respectively. So,
That was moved and seconded.
Mayor Pro Tem's.
Where are you gonna put that?
Under new business,
Mayor
D
Pro-
and E.
No.
Call the question.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem's,
Let's put it after the manager's report.
But what after the manager's report?
Chris Gibson's report.
Okay.
He's here right now. He doesn't need
Okay.
to stay
Oh,
for
it is.
2
Oh,
hours.
no. Okay, so what we're proposing then is the 28th item under new business and Chris Gibson's update right after Alice.
Correct.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Well, thank you. Got through that item. The next item would be the manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item to report on is the environmental impact statement with the Army Corps of Engineers. Our next call with the Army Corps is pending while we are currently waiting for Dow Cordy, the engineers, to submit chapters 5 and chapter 6 to the Army Corps for them to review. We expect that to happen any day now. I have emailed them asking for a timeline. I haven't received it yet, but we do expect that to happen any day now. So once that is confirmed that the Army Corps has received those chapters, we will be able to schedule a call, and I'll schedule another meeting with the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem. Tropical Storm Ophelia, monitoring and updates started the week of September 18th. Updates were continuing throughout the event. Met with staff prior to the event. Once again, this is all very similar to the last storm we just had. We just went through this, so I feel it's a repeat. But we did prepare and secure loose items once again. Roadway and beach patrols removing abandoned items pre-storm. Code red notification was sent to all subscribed on Friday, September 22nd, along with the state of emergency that was declared on Friday, September 22nd, without imposing any restrictions by the mayor. The state of emergency was rescinded on Saturday, September 23rd at 5:00 p.m. That was rescinded once we went through another high tide to just ensure that we had no additional flooding. I touched base with TI Coastal and ATM on Monday following the storm to request they survey current beach conditions post-storm. Overall, they felt the beach fared well, looks very similar to their previous assessment following Adalia with some intermittent beach berm and dune scarping. Nothing serious to report. They provided documented photo documentation of the same locations as the previous post-storm drive for comparison, so we have those on record. Work closely again with the trash contractor to determine and communicate the schedule and verified operations as I went through assessments on Saturday. Of course, trash day was scheduled for Saturday, the day of the storm, so that was, convenient. Kept in communication with surrounding town managers once again and the county manager as well to share information and to provide updates. Public Works worked to resecure the gate to the drive-on area post-storm where the screw was pulled out of the post due to the wind. Surveyed the town at daybreak on Saturday, the 23rd, photo documenting flooded areas to provide updates. Notices were published throughout the day. We once again experienced flooding in the same locations near Gray Street and Richard Peters Park, and we rerouted traffic on Saturday near Gray Street. That was the worst area that we had that experienced flooding. Beach projects, the Phase 1 permit modification is still pending as of right now. We do anticipate having an answer on this next week. This modification would allow us to start early November with the remaining Phase 1 work. So we'll be able to go in, if we get this modification, to go in November 1st, start with Phase 1, close that out, and then that will line us up to start Phase 5, which is scheduled to start on November 16th. And work will continue through February and will be completed once and for all for Phase 5 area. Phase 4 then is anticipated to start February.
Alice, on that topic, just a quick question. Do we have any idea how far into Phase 4 we'll be able to get before we have to stop and get off the
The
beach?
total project will be 2.5 miles north. We anticipate them to get partway, so
Okay. So we're not
hopefully,
quite sure exactly, but,
yeah.
okay.
Can I just do a
There-
quick follow-up on that? I know that, and I think, Colin, a follow-up on your comment is, we have a certain amount of money. And if there's a problem putting it in there, there's more rocks or whatever, which is what happened in the Phase 5 thing, we're only gonna spend the money we've got, I guess is the point.
No,
Right.
I was just wondering, based on the environmental window
Oh,
that we
okay.
have.
Not the total
for-
project.
Not
Got
the
it.
cost. I was just wondering, because the area that we're putting it in, Phase 4, is looking good from a dune perspective. Those owners have really been working hard to get their dunes vegetated, and what we have done has also greatly kind of given that a kickstart, so that sand would be good.
Excellent.
And Fran is prepared. You'll notice he's in the consent agenda for today's meeting. He'll be pulled out of consent agenda next meeting to be able to go fully into detail with the projects and where we're at. The Onwassa Booster Pump Project, the construction contract for the booster pump station that's going to be built here at Town Hall is out for bid. The pre-bid meeting with prospective contractors is scheduled for Wednesday, October 11th from 2 to 4 p.m., and that will be here at Town Hall. It'll take place in this boardroom. Events, Wednesday, November 15th is the second annual Christmas tree lighting. Just a reminder, it'll be held here at Town Hall at 6 p.m. Staff created and published the event details so far. Santa will be here for the lighting. The Sneads Ferry Presbyterian Church choirs will be here to perform. We will have face painting. Karen Beasley Sea Turtle Hospital will be here, and the Sneads Ferry Girl Scouts Troop 361 will be here to help serve hot chocolate and cookies. So we expanded a little bit from last year, from our first one. So we have a little bit more to activities, and it's all free of charge. There's no charge to anyone for those activities. A reminder of our first annual Halloween pet parade and pet costume contest coming up. Again, I'd like to give a big thank you to our sponsor, Pet Supplies Plus, who graciously agreed to pay for the event. So they sponsored everything 100%. So very grateful to them. The event will take place on October 25th from 5 to 7 p.m. at Richard Peters Park. Once again, we've coordinated, you'll be supporting Share the Table by bringing a non-perishable item. There's no charge to attend, no charge to enter your pet for the contest. We just ask that you bring something for Share the Table. And we will also have raffle baskets available that will all the money raised will go to Paws for Cause, which is another nonprofit in the area. Again, free to attend. The vegetative debris pickup is once again scheduled October 23rd through the 27th, which is coming up. We just ask that you place your debris near the roadside in the right-of-way the week prior to the scheduled pickup. Public Works will be providing the pickup as a one-time sweep on those mentioned dates. You can go to our website, and we'll be posting those details on Facebook as well.
Could I ask for clarification on that? Isn't the procedure now that leaves and any small vegetative debris be placed in those recyclable vegetation bags?
Well,
rather than loosely piled at the street?
yeah, the details are on the website for debris like leaves are to be placed in the brown paper bags that you can find at Ace Hardware or Lowe's or any home improvement store. But anything, as far as trees of a certain diameter, those need to be placed in the right of way. They don't need to be put in bags.
And that's actually a significant improvement from folks having to take all their debris to the Jeffries lot for pickup. So, thank you for that.
Yep. And we'll once again be doing the process where we grind the vegetated debris that's collected and have that available for mulch. Grants, we executed the memorandum of agreement for the cybersecurity grant that I mentioned at the last meeting for $13,527. And we've also recently received communication that we will be receiving grant funds in amount of $34,000 to acquire an additional drone and beach vehicle. So that concludes my report.
So I had some questions come to me, Alice, as it relates to the additional funds that we received for the drone and the beach vehicle. And I know that we submitted that request, it was like probably 6 months ago it was a while ago. But at the time, that is what we got what we asked for.
Correct. Because
Right.
we were told to request something. I was told to prepare something small.
Yep.
So
And
that's what I
we
did.
asked. But we did get what we asked for.
Yes, we did.
So moving forward, maybe there's a way we could start some communication about some additional funding assistance for the fire
But,
station.
yes, absolutely.
So we are thankful for what we have. That's what I basically wanted to say.
And actually, as you and I talked about, Mayor, I've already talked to the county about what we can do, and they're helping us in terms of they're trying to get money for next year. And
Perfect.
specifically, we talked about the fire
For the
station.
fire station.
Perfect. Okay, any additional questions for the town manager? No? Okay, so the next item is open forum. Oh, I'm sorry, Chris Gibson. We moved him up. Yep, you're next, sir. Thank you.
Hit the button.
And Chris, you weren't here when we amended the agenda. You weren't here when we amended the agenda. We had you on to give an update of the North End flooding assessment that you were kind enough to go up and take a look at for us.
Yes, ma'am, and I actually brought some pictures. To talk about the flooding. So, this picture, we actually went up there on September. There we go. Sorry about that. I actually met with Alice and Mike Benson up there on September 16th, to walk down, look at some of what might be issues down here, why this back corner on River Road is flooding. This picture was taken later that night, and there was flooding up there. Flip to the next picture, if you would. There's been concerns by some of the folks up there that water is coming through the drive-on access. The issue really there is more, not so much the water coming through this area, as it is that those homes are extremely low. And so the guys were up there because this is a good test area for us. We're testing out our LiDAR drone, and the topography on this was good for us to do some calibrations. So they were up there this morning and took some elevations. And at the corner of River Road where it turns and makes the bend, the elevation of the street there is only 3 inches above normal high tide. So if you have any kind of tidal, new moon, full moon tide, king tide, you're going to see flooding, whether it's coming through this area here on the beach. The beach is actually much higher. The beach is at elevation 5, whereas in the back, down there at the corner, the elevations are right around elevation 2. So the beach is actually 3 foot higher than these lots. We did cross sections across the street down there. Can you flip to another picture? So as you can see here, looking from the corner, you can actually see visually that there is an uphill rise going toward the beach. And there's an uphill rise likewise going the other way toward the oceanfront beach. So this is a depressed area. The big concern when you start trying to keep water out, dike water out, is that when it rains, you keep water in. So there's a concern of what you do here. Next slide, next picture. Again, this is showing the area at the corner where it drains, and I believe the next picture is a really good one. This was taken this morning, an hour after low tide. There was water that was actually coming in from the marsh side. I would expect by now there's water in the street. This was taken at about 8:30 this morning. Tide would be high back there around 2 o'clock this afternoon. So again, this is one of the situations where what do you do? Now, the tide, as you're coming in, you know, water always flows downhill. That's why it flows. So water is, as the tide comes in, the tide is higher at the inlet first, and then it gets high, it goes through the marsh. You always hear about the lag. Okay, I live on the Sound. My lag is 2 hours behind the inlet. That is more the reason why you're seeing water come in through the access rather than coming through the back. It's just a timing thing. And the reason that it's not getting out isn't because it's jammed up in the back. It's because the water level in the back has risen to the point it can't get out. There are probably a few tidal events where it might, with wind, etc., might be high enough to come over the front but not actually come up from the back. Rare occasions. Raising that, putting some more elevation into that cross through instead of being at grade may be helpful for 1 out of 10 events. But unfortunately, especially right now in this this year, October is the peak tide every year. That is an annual thing. If the moon is in apogee during the full moon in October, that's the biggest tide for 20 years. We're sitting smack dab in the middle of that. So what people are seeing right now is a tidal event that is astronomical on a 20-year scale. And they're going to see that each of the next 2 weeks. You're on the new moon now. No, we're on the full moon now. And we'll see it again on the new moon on the 15th, on the full moon right around the 30th, and then those tides will start decreasing down. But right now, during those king tides this time of year, we're running 1 foot to 1.5 foot above normal, which means water is going to come in from the back. If I were to recommend anything for the town, there are, as far as to do, I think without turning this area into New Orleans, where you have it completely leveed around, or Denmark, and are pumping water out, then every time it rains, there's not a whole lot you can do to stop this. If you want to experiment to see if we can prevent a small percentage of the events that do come through only at grade crossing to the beach, you currently have a large pile of sand that's sitting in the park, the county park, a couple of miles away, that we had to take out of the dune because it wasn't dune quality but would be useful for this. It's something you could do with your internal equipment, and would be a limited or no cost, and may get some parking spots back down in that area. But as far as making a major expenditure to raise the dune, put in a Hatteras style ramp so that you could actually drive on more vertical grades. And that's really what a Hatteras ramp is for. Do y'all all know what a Hatteras ramp is? Okay, everybody knows what a Hatteras ramp is. The purpose of a Hatteras ramp is to keep vehicles from getting stuck, is to give them traction. It doesn't really provide support as far as preventing erosion. Only prevents vehicles from getting bogged down so that you can have steeper grades. You have enough space there between the road entrance to the parking lot and the front of the dune to probably raise that up about 2 feet without having to do any kind of Hatteras ramp. And again, front end loader, I know you've got a front end loader, I know you've got a small dump truck. You could haul that material up there, backblade it with the front end loader, and it would be there'd just be internal costs. It wouldn't be something to contract out. As far as doing a major project to try to do something up there to restructure that entrance, I don't think that it would really improve the situation enough to do anything large magnitude.
Couple questions. Chris,
sir.
can I ask you a couple questions?
Sure.
You know, I went down there and looked at it as well. And full disclosure, my first job as an engineer was road drainage,
Right.
okay? When I looked at this, it's a bowl.
It is.
It's effectively, you know, a large catch basin, whatever you want to call it. And once you block it, it's got to come in from someplace, and it looked like it was coming in from that pond as well. So it's, what you're telling us, that you have a situation where you have a bowl, okay? And until you, and nobody's suggesting it, the only way you could ever do anything is to raise that, which is not, it's no way. So when you, and just real quick on the, I think what you suggested is if you wanted to try something that's a 1 in 20 or 1 in 10 shot, if you wanted to take some gravel that you're not using, I think what you're telling us, don't spend any real money back there. And the other thing I would ask you, just as a follow-up, is when you come up with your beach report and we're looking at something, whether it's the groin or whatever it's gonna do down there, isn't that gonna impact whatever we look to do back in there as well? Or could it, I should say?
Okay, so let me get these, 6 questions. Let me get them in a row. Okay, so first of all, yeah, my recommendation is there is spending a large quantity of money up there is not going to get a large benefit. There's no big bang for the buck up there because you've got water coming from all directions. It's the low point. And actually, when we did the elevations of the marsh in several places on the north side of the road is actually higher than the lots. So, and higher than the asphalt itself. So, and that's, you know, if it's a wetland, so it's always constantly getting water. I have been told that there is some retention of water in that pond up there by private individuals that try to keep that as an amenity pond. That does raise the water table, which reduces the amount that water can percolate through the sand. So that causes, once the water gets in, that delays it getting out. I think that if we tried something like we're talking about by raising the elevation of that drive-through area, that it would, at best, would impact maybe 10% of the events. 90% of the events would still occur.
And then just real quick on that, because what concerned me about it when I looked at it was, this no pun intended, water's fluid. If you block it one place, it's going someplace else. And what you're telling us is you've got a bowl there, a catch basin, eventually it's gonna find its way into the lowest area.
It's gonna come into the lowest area. I mean, there's the old adage you talked about doing highway drainage, and the engineers were trying to figure out where to put the retention pond, and they were looking at all the maps, and the foreman's like, "Can I help you?" And they're like, "No, you're not educated enough to do this." And he said, "What are you trying to do?" And I said, "We're trying to figure out where to put the drainage pond." So he got in his truck, he filled a 50-gallon barrel with water, drove up to the top of the hill, kicked it out of the back of his truck, and where the water ran was where he said, "That's where you need to put your pond." All right? Basically, these homes sit where that pond is supposed to be. Because they are the lowest of all the surrounding areas. And again, short of doing something like Denmark or New Orleans, there's not really a way to stop this completely. There's not a way to solve this problem. It's just a matter of, you know, if you have an opportunity where you've got some really inexpensive way to maybe prevent 1 or 2 events out of the year, then maybe that's worth doing something, but I would not recommend going out and spending $50,000 or $100,000 restructuring this area. It's just not worth the squeeze.
Chris, just a point here. There has been a lot of social media comments that we need to fix the drainage in that area. And what you have just told us and explained in very nice detail is water runs downhill.
Yes, sir.
And so there is no drainage to fix there because the houses and the road are at the lowest point.
Correct.
Just want to go back. Hi, Chris. Good to see you.
Good to see you, sir.
I was trying to take notes as you were talking, and you talked about October peak tide time and the moon is in, what did you call it that the moon is in?
It's an apogee. It means it's the closest to the Earth that
Okay.
it gets in its rotation.
And this is, I'm following up on Mike's comment and about some of the stuff we've been reading on that great thing we call social media. That the peak tide action is the greatest that it's been in or will be for 20 years, correct?
This is the moon in apogee in October is the peak of the tidal what they call tidal epoch, which is a 19.8 year cycle where the moon and sun and earth go through and get into the same position they were.
Okay.
And this is the peak.
I thought it was 18.6 years, just out of curiosity. What did you say?
19.8.
19, okay.
So the point is that we're being asked to do something about something that effectively is about phases of the moon.
Correct.
And is going to ultimately going to subside over time because you said we're at the peak action in a 20-year cycle. Is that correct?
So it will go down over the next decade, and then over the following decade, it will start to rise back up, and it will run in a it's very cyclical. It's very predictable. Unfortunately, this time of year is when you have storms as well that throw a little bit of surge on top of that. So if you get a full moon in October and a little bit of storm surge, even from a northeasterly, it's this area is so low, it's going to be underwater. I would probably refer this to Brian more because of what towns can legally do, but these folks are needing to raise if they want to not flood, they need to raise their own land. And that's private land. I mean, the town can't go on there and raise their lot. You see things up and down the island here where we've had over the years when we had Floyd and we got overwashed. And you see places more in Surf City and Topsail Beach where the road used to be higher than the lots, but because of the overwash, the land got raised, and now the roads flood, and you have these giant puddles that are all over the place. And that's because the road that used to be the high ground is now the low ground. In this situation, those lots are just the low ground. It just is.
Just one quickie. The water table's got to be high back there. Then doesn't that affect what's going on back there too? I can't believe the water table's not almost pretty close to the surface back there because of all the flooding, isn't it?
I would suspect, given where typically you're going to see the water table at the mean tide level, and so back there, without any kind of alteration by man, the water table should be within about 2 feet of the surface there. If that pond is raised up and retains rainwater, then that's higher than the normal water table. That will raise the water table in a decreasing. The farther you get from the pond, the farther down the water table will get. But that can actually lift the water table as well. And again, that changes the percolation of water through the soil and how fast it can get away.
Okay, any additional questions?
I want to thank you so much for this, for your detailed explanation. This is something that we have been in contact with homeowners about, and you've given us a lot of answers to our questions. Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
And I don't believe that there's any motion that's required, so, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to thank you also, Chris. You've spoken in layman's terms, I think, that I could understand, and so thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Chris, for coming in today. I
Yes,
appreciate
ma'am.
it.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, so the next item is the open forum. Do we have anybody signed up?
Yes, Mayor, you have three. The first one is Martin Willett.
Okay. Sir, when you come up, if you could speak your name and your address, please.
Hey, I'm Martin Willett. I live at 209 Seashore Drive. Just a minute of bicycle advocacy, especially when it comes to the bike lane along 210. I know that might make you nervous. It's like we just dealt with golf carts, and now we've got to talk about bicycles. But just a few things. The bike lane must be very complicated to maintain. It's got 2 municipalities, 2 counties, and it adjoins a North Carolina state highway. So I understand that there might be some areas that need to be figured out. And I also realize that bicycle infrastructure has never, ever been at the top of any government budget, probably, so I understand that too. But having said that, I'm very lucky to have a bike lane to use, and I'm very appreciative that some forward-thinking people made that happen for at least one section of the town. Since I not only ride for fitness, but I also go places on my bicycle, sometimes I am asked by people, is the bike lane wide enough and is it safe to use? And my answer generally is yes to both of those questions, but only if it's clean. There's sort of an implied contract, not a legal contract, I don't think, but an implied contract that you want me to stay over in that lane when I'm on my bicycle. And I very much want to stay over in that lane when I'm on my bicycle. But I encounter all kinds of things in that lane. Trash cans, broken bottles, construction vehicles. Also down at the county access, there's always a big pile of rocks. So probably every time I do go up and down that bike lane, I probably have to swerve into the motor vehicle traffic lane probably 3 or 4 times. That's just kind of the reality, and I understand that's part of beach living is that sand and those rocks do kind of get in the way. There's kind of an irony at work because, you know, I want a nice clean lane over there, but the dude in the Ford F-150 who's roaring by, he'd like nothing more than to get his tires dirty. So it's almost like we're in the wrong places out there on the highway. Also, I invite you to look with me into the future a little bit. I think it's established that electrified and non-electrified vehicles of various speeds and wheelbases are all in our futures, whether we want that or not. The e-bike technology keeps improving and the prices are going down. So it's estimated that maybe 1/4 of all bicycles sold are now electrified in some way. So while the bike lane might be wide enough and safe enough right now, the question is, as these different modes evolve, will that be true 5, 10, 20 years from now? Especially when they start renting a lot more e-bikes than they're renting now. Also just wanted to emphasize the importance of safety. You and I both know that some sections of that bike lane become de facto sidewalks. And I can encounter a baby carriage, I can encounter a family with toddlers. Once I even encountered a golf cart coming right at me going down the wrong direction. They are de facto sidewalks for some of those sections. I'm a cautious rider. Sometimes I worry that people, especially kids who rent bicycles, aren't wearing helmets. I understand that's a personal choice, but I wonder if we as a community have ever thought about some federal grant money to make some helmets available. That would be one question that I would have. And so other clarifications I'm asking for: how are the current multi-use trails maintained and cleaned? Who to contact? Probably the town manager, and I've been discussing this with her. If there's a specific thing, like there's the Real Housewives ride is this Saturday. My wife and I rode up and down. There's a big pile of broken glass right by the county access. Do I go clean that up? Does somebody else clean that up? So anyway, just those are my comments, and I thank you for your kind attention.
As a former serious bike rider myself, Mr. Willett, I remember back in the day, state law was passed that motorists are required to give bicyclists it's either a 4 or 5 foot wide berth when you pass a bicycle. So just to remind the public that, you know, part of bicycle safety is giving bicyclists a wide berth when you pass them.
Fred, did you want to say something?
Yes, Mr. Will, I also, as you probably read some of my posts, I concur with a lot of what you're saying, and I'm sure the town manager is taking notes, and the police chief's taking notes. We'll make sure that, in Public Works, we'll make sure that that area is addressed. And also just, we will take that into consideration, definitely the e-vehicles, e-bikes. My daughter and her husband have e-bikes in Durham, and believe me, some of the streets they're on in Durham scare the heck out of me. Yeah, we're talking about doing similar bike lanes on New River Inlet Road. So all of your comments will be addressed for the immediate concern on Island Drive and in our future construction when that happens.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I just want to thank you for coming up also and presenting to us. I've also recently rediscovered bicycling, and I'm one of those people with one of those cheap e-bikes that came off Amazon, and I put 300 miles on it this year, all on this island. And I hear you. Appreciate you coming up, talk to us.
Go ahead, Ms. Bottle.
I'd also like to thank you for your comments and to remind people that North Carolina state law is anybody under 16 does have to wear a helmet when they're on their bikes. And maybe we can do something with either a grant or maybe we can do something in the future for like bicycle awareness, safety, a safety day or something like that. Thank you.
Okay, and next presenter?
Kip Malcolm.
Okay, hi, sir. And your address, Kip?
Certainly. My name is Kip Malcolm. I live at 3102 Green Street in Ocean City.
Thank you.
I'm here just to kind of give you a quick update on the Ocean City Beach Citizens Council. Back at our last meeting, September 2nd, there was a vote to replace Carla Torrey, who has served for many months and years as president of the Citizens Council. So she wanted to step down, and Janelle Stovall was elected as the incoming president of the Ocean City Beach Citizens Council. I know everybody on the council, on the board here is familiar with the Ocean City community and the Jazz Festival. So basically, she took the job under the premise that she would have somebody that would help do liaison work with the board. So I will try to attend more meetings since relocating to this area from the DC area about 1.5 years ago. I retired up there, moved down here, and lived down here full time. So I've been watching the meetings virtually, and this is my first time attending in person. But I did want to just introduce myself and let you know that if you have any questions or issues in regards to the Ocean City Beach community, by all means let me know, and I can relay that information back to the president. Thank you.
And just quick, hey Kip, I go to the county meetings. Maybe you ought to come with me sometime and we can set up something for you to talk to the commissioners, because we did get, the
Right.
10 grand for them, and like
Correct.
you and I talked about.
Your efforts with Onslow County to get the 10,000 for the new signs, which obviously look incredible.
They do.
The historical marker there. I think the community just wants to continue to preserve the legacy of the many families and the history, the rich history that community has built. So absolutely, I think especially as we fast approach the 4th of July weekend again for the Jazz Festival. I think there's a lot of great being done in this community, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
Okay. And also, they've got a June 30 fiscal year like we do, so we need to make sure that we hit them in the spring.
Before.
Yeah, to put the stuff in there, because I think the Jazz Festival would be something, maybe we can get them to, they've been very willing to work with us. So if you're willing to do that, let's stay in touch, we can do it.
I'm absolutely looking forward to it.
And Kip, the only thing I would suggest is I know that Alice worked very closely with Carla on all of the events and needs of Ocean City and however we could be supportive as a board. So if you would just please stay in contact with Alice, and she'll bring back to us whatever you need as well. Certainly reach out to the board at any time, but you know how supportive we are of Ocean City.
Absolutely, and I think that was what the board had relayed as well. Like I said, I've heard many of your names mentioned by Carla, and I know that she's been very appreciative of what the town has done, what the county has done. So yeah, definitely relaying her thanks and gratitude for her years of service to the Ocean City Beach community as a president. Now, I don't mean she's leaving. She's clearly still going to be actively involved, but we do have a new president.
Okay.
And just real quick, no joy rides on the fire truck, please.
Try not to.
He's right next door to us.
Oh, okay.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And do we have one more?
One more, Hannah, is it Klaus?
McLeod.
McLeod, I'm sorry.
Hi, Hannah.
Okay. I'm speaking here as the chairman of the Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Adjustment. We're very encouraged by the response to the town's request for volunteers for the Planning Board and Zoning Board of Adjustment vacancies. Thanks to you all. We encourage each other, we encourage other interested citizens to volunteer and/or attend the monthly meetings. All input is appreciated. Traditionally, reappointment recommendations and new member applications as adopted in our rules and regulations for both Planning and Zoning Board of Adjustments are presented to the Board of Aldermen for approval, and that's going to be done today. These reappointments will allow the alternates to gain experience and continuing education provided by our planning director, and the appointment of the alternates will allow for growth and fresh perspective to our boards. We would like to take this occasion to thank our planning director, Deb Hill, and her staff for their work and dedication to continuing education and presentations that give direction and to these important decisions that the boards have to discuss and recommend to the Board of Aldermen. We hope that these new appointments, as presented, will continue the environmental and economic development of North Topsail Beach. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, so the next item is public present. Oh, I'm sorry. Come on up. That's all right, Susan. Come on up.
Susan Meyer, 2224 New River Inlet Road, number 138, excuse me. I'm here representing the Committee for Concerned and Informed Citizens and wanted to present that we will be having a meet and greet at Splash next week, tentatively on the 12th. Light hors d'oeuvres will be served, and it'll be from 5 to 7. I will get back to you on the exact date for sure as soon as I have it all nailed down. Anyway, I just wanted to make that announcement today and invite candidates to come to the meet and greet, and of course, concerned citizens and voters. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, so the next item is public presentations and hearings, which we don't have today. So then I'm going to move on to the consent agenda, and I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, then under continuing business, we're going to start with an exciting update from Alderman Leonard regarding COBRA.
All right, I'm going to stand up and do this because it's just a little easier than, can you hear me if I do that through the mic? Okay. I reported last month that the staff director for the House Subcommittee on Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries had visited our town during August when she was here on vacation with her family. During that visit, the manager and I were able to take her out and show her our town from one end to the other and identify to her where the COBRA areas begin and end. And during that visit, there was discussion regarding a possible upcoming House Subcommittee hearing. I received an email from her on the 11th of September that the hearing was with the House Subcommittee on Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries had been set for September the 28th. Soon after that, I got a really neat letter in the mail inviting me to come up and talk. When we got there, there were several similar bills that were all addressed in the same hearing last Thursday. Each of the congressmen sponsoring the bills, I think there were 4, was given 5 minutes of time to introduce their bill. And then each of those of us who'd been invited to testify had 5 minutes to present oral remarks. In the oral remarks, we had already been requested to present and submit written remarks, and then the oral remarks are obviously just a summary of those. So once all the testimony was provided, the congressmen are then each provided with 5 minutes of time to Q&A those who had testified. Congressman Murphy introduced House Resolution 2437, the bill he sponsored to remove our town's area from COBRA. He had filed that bill shortly after the mayor and the manager and I visited Washington earlier this year in March. In his remarks introducing the bill, he stated that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service had wrongly designated the north end of Topsail Island, comprising the town of North Topsail Beach, as being in the Coastal Barrier Resources System, despite the fact that it had been under development and had infrastructure in place, and that his bill would correct a 40-year error. So then, as we went through, the first person to speak was a representative named Mr. Strickler from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And he stated that the Fish and Wildlife had reviewed this over and over again. We'd been there and back several times, and that Fish and Wildlife was sticking with what they felt the maps were right, and that there was no need to change them. And in fact, he said that the administration opposes the bill. Okay. No big surprise there. I mean, they've been doing that every time we've been up there. I presented, and we've kind of decided amongst ourselves that I'm going to go ahead and read my 5 minutes of testimony that I gave to the subcommittee. And the reason I'm doing that is so it'll be in the minutes for this meeting, so we'll have a record of it. So I'm going to just read it as I read it, and I will tell you, they give you 5 minutes, and there's a countdown clock, and when I said my last word, I had 2 seconds left. So it goes like this. Chairman Bentz, Ranking Member Huffman, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today on H.R. 2437. This legislation will correct a mapping error made by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service over 40 years ago when it incorrectly designated the north end of Topsail Island, which is now the town of North Topsail Beach, as a Coastal Barrier Resources Act, or COBRA zone. North Topsail Beach is one of the 3 small towns located on Topsail Island, 26-mile-long barrier island between Jacksonville and Wilmington, North Carolina, and adjacent to Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune. Due to our proximity to Camp Lejeune, many of our residents and visitors have a military connection, including myself, a retired United States Marine Corps officer with 30 years of service. Like you, North Topsail Beach plays an important role in the collective federal, state, and local effort to preserve and maintain barrier islands. As the primary law that protects barrier islands, COBRA is a law that we hold in the highest regard and with the greatest respect. As effective as COBRA has been collectively for the federal government, the taxpayers, and the environment, the application of the law in North Topsail Beach has not been wholly positive or successful. In fact, both North Topsail Beach and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service recognize that Topsail Unit L06 is one of the most developed COBRA system units in the United States. COBRA has been overwhelmingly successful at deterring development, so the question must be asked, why did COBRA not deter development in North Topsail Beach? Development continued in North Topsail Beach after the passage of COBRA because the town already had a full complement of infrastructure in place before the enactment of COBRA in October of 1982. Having a full complement of infrastructure is one of 2 primary criteria the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service uses to determine if an area is developed and thus not eligible for inclusion in the Coastal Barrier Resources System. The other is the density of development. Full complement of infrastructure is defined by law as a road with a reinforced roadbed, a wastewater disposal system, electric service, and a freshwater supply, all of which must be sufficient to serve each lot or building site in the area. Thorough examination of records and documentations, which is summarized in my written testimony, shows that the north end of Topsail Island had a full complement of infrastructure that meets the requirements outlined in the service's own guidance and the law. Roadways have existed along the entire length of Topsail Island since the 1940s. 1982 zoning map shows that all lots on the northern end of Topsail Island had direct access to a road with a reinforced roadbed. Jones Onslow Membership Cooperative has provided electrical service to the island since the 1940s. Maps supplied by Jones Onslow show that even the northernmost reaches of Topsail Island had electrical service by 1980. North Topsail Water and Sewer was established in 1979 to provide water and sewer services to North Topsail. Onslow County began to construct its own water system to service the island in 1980. Records established that water and sewer utility lines ran to the northernmost reaches of the island by the end of 1981. Hundreds of structures were built in North Topsail before the enactment of COBRA, and hundreds more were built in the years following due to the substantial infrastructure investments made on the island by both public and private entities. There was so much growth in the area that in 1980, West Onslow Beach, which is now what we call North Topsail Beach, was nominated as a statewide, quote, growth center, end quote. It is clear that Congress did not intend to include areas in COBRA with such significant on-the-ground infrastructure investment by private entities and local governments. We agree with Congress, which states that, quote, an area which has full complement of infrastructure, i.e. some combination of roads, waters, sewers, electrical lines, etc., but not structures, suggests that the area is, as a practical matter, already developed, close quote. Being included in COBRA has no doubt had an impact on our community. Our residents cannot qualify for federal flood insurance. Our town cannot apply for federal grants and loans or named storm assistance, and our veterans cannot access federally backed mortgage products, including VA loans. But H.R. 2437 is about equal treatment under the law and is in no way an attempt to subvert COBRA. This bill will just allow our community to be treated like any other community that was not mapped into COBRA, including the 2 other towns on Topsail Island. On behalf of the town of North Topsail Beach, I urge you to support and approve H.R. 2437, and I end it with thank you again for this generous opportunity. So what happened next was I give my testimony, and then when Congressman Murphy had a chance to ask his 5 minutes of Q&A, he asked me 2 questions. First was why I thought our town's inclusion in COBRA was incorrect. Went back to the fact that the full complement of infrastructure had been there prior to 1982. Also talked about the areas and how the analysis for COBRA was not done correctly. It was done by an overflight in a small plane, and they took aerial photos, and they missed a lot of the roads and the water and the utilities and all that. And the other issue was that it should have been an either or. Either you, to disqualify you from COBRA, you either need to have structures or you need to have the infrastructure, but you don't have to have both the infrastructure and the structures. And if you look at where our COBRA areas where we were not put into COBRA, it was places where we had buildings. So they missed, and they didn't discount all the areas where we had just the infrastructure. So I gave him that answer, and the second question that he asked me was, he wanted to know how much area we were asking to have removed from COBRA Unit L06. And I responded that we were looking at 590 acres out of the total of 5,865 acres within L06, which is roughly 10%. And he made some comments about that, and so we're up here talking about 10% of the area, and yes, sir, we are. And then he turned to Mr. Strickler from Fish and Wildlife, and this was the best part. This was the best part. He asked him if he'd ever been to the area in question. Well, I knew he hadn't, because Strickler and I had had a little conversation before the hearing started. Well, I've never been to Topsail Island. I've been down to the Outer Banks, but I've never been there. So Strickler kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit before he said he'd never been here. Beyond that, the next thing that happened was that the committee members are authorized or afforded the opportunity to submit written questions for the record. That then there's like a 10-day period. I think they have until today or tomorrow to have them in. And then there's a 10-day period that those questions have to be asked, and they're questions to the panel who testified. And fortunately, so far, I don't think we have any. But at 12:27, the day of the hearing, I got an email from Ray Celeste in Congressman Murphy's office providing me with the question that had been submitted by Congressman Murphy to Fish and Wildlife, and it reads as follows. Would Mr. Strickler be willing to meet with Alderman Leonard at North Topsail Beach to survey the 590 acres of land that H.R. 2437 would take out of COBRA zone known as L06? So Murphy's on our side. We've been working on this a long time. I have no idea where it's going. But right now, we're just gonna keep pushing them and pushing them and pushing them and try to kick that ball through the goalpost. Subject to questions by the board, that concludes my Cobra update.
I just want to thank you, Tom, for going up there and representing us. I know you've been working on the removal of COBRA for many, many, many years. I am very thrilled with how much support we have from our congressmen and those who are trying to just help us to get through this issue. So I agree, we just keep pushing. And I'll open it up to the board if anybody has any questions.
I want to echo the mayor's comments. This is something that this town has worked on. I've been a resident for 27 years, and from the time that I started coming to board meetings over 20 years ago, this is something that has been really a big thorn in the side of the town, and this is as far as I've ever seen it go. I hope it continues. I hope we have a positive outcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Tom. It's been a item that you have put your heart and soul in, and I think you've got it to the point now. We've got the most support we've ever had to get this thing corrected. So thanks a lot for making the effort, Tom.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, I don't know how many of you have listened to the hearing, and I think Tom should be very proud of the way he handled himself. He was very calm in his testimony. It was very professionally done. He represented the town in an incredible way, and I'm very proud of what you've done.
Mayor, if I could just follow up real quick. I appreciate all the kind words. The fact is that we've had tremendous amount of support this go around with Congressman Murphy's office. We have a personal friend up there. He's a retired Marine. He's a friend of mine. We didn't serve together, but we know a bunch of people in common. He's a neighbor of my son's up in Alexandria, Virginia. And Ray Celeste has just been phenomenal in his keeping this thing up in the air, keeping this ball in the air. And we probably talk about once every 2 to 3 weeks. He was the one that put together the visit with the staff director for Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries when she came down for vacation. That's what really got that hearing to happen, was her coming down here. And she came down here because she had talked to Ray Celeste. And so when it comes down to, so much of the stuff is about making relationships and keeping them and talking to people and keeping the doors open. And I can't thank those folks up in Washington enough for what they have done so far for this town. And with any luck at all, the next place this goes is it has to go to the full committee for markup. Then it goes, hopefully, to the House floor for a vote. So we're chipping away at it. There's no guarantees, as we all know, and I know some of you have got houses in Cobra. Mine's not, which is kind of funny. You know, I'm doing all this work, and I get nothing out of it personally because my house is in federal flood, but it's a big thing for this town, and we all know what a big thing it is for this town because of how many things it restricts us opportunity-wise from funding and just in general. And it was wrongly done. It was wrongly done in the first place. So I appreciate all the support from everybody, and I want to recognize the folks in Washington who helped us out, for the record.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so the next item on here it's a follow-on from the public hearing we had last board meeting, where Ms. Hill presented the wetland protection and definition, and we talked about the fine schedule. So what we're asking for here is, as it relates to ordinance 2303 and the amendment to the fee schedule. So the first item I'm asking for is, because I'm assuming that everybody has read the updated language. Okay, so what I'm asking for is a motion to adopt ordinance 2303 as it was presented to the board.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion?
Yes, discussion. I am not satisfied yet with the section 10.07.06 wetland protection. we talked about this last time, and we talked about the fact that we were putting the, and like I said in my comments earlier this morning, we were putting the homeowner responsible for protecting the wetlands. So I think that this section should emphasize in the beginning that A, it is the responsibility of the property owner to guarantee protection of wetland. So I would propose moving that section up to A under this subsection. Secondly, I think that item D should become the second item. So the idea is to prioritize as property owners responsible for protecting the wetlands. The wetlands are described in the second bullet. The third bullet is construction, if there's, should not be damaged, but there is a fine. And I was not happy at all that the wetlands have to be restored in 7 days. That's just not biologically possible. So we need to come up with some kind of reasonable time period within which the wetlands that have been damaged are restored. And then finally, it talks about wetland grasses. That should be the final bullet. And bullet E, I think, should be eliminated.
Can I respond?
Yes, sir.
Suggestions to revise this section of the ordinance.
Okay. For a couple of reasons, I oppose that. One is, we had this discussion in a hearing a week ago, or whenever our last meeting was, and the idea was that we presented this to town council and to the planning director for them to come back with language. And so, if you want to propose something down the road, that's fine, but I don't think we can just change here. The second thing is, and we had this discussion before, is that the idea behind these fines is not to punish people, it's to keep them from doing things. And when you eliminate something about having them restored, the reality, Mike, is that if somebody tears up the wetlands, it's going to be years before it's put back, all right?
I agree.
That's the reality. And I'm just playing devil's advocate here. If I build a $3 million house and I tear up the wetlands to put a pool in and all the other stuff back there, and the only thing I get is one $10,000 fine and nothing to follow up on that, that's a cheap price for me to go ahead and put my pool in and ignore everything else. And so unless you have an incentive for people to put it back, I mean, the reality is, it's the same way with the dunes. Once you tear them up, all right, to put a dune back, and I think Connie talked about this, it is years before they get redone. So fundamentally, I don't mind having a discussion down the road on that, but we already hashed this out in the last meeting with the idea, and I think you were opposed to it then, but I think the idea was to go back to Brian and go back to Deb to get the language, and frankly, that's where I stand on it. I think that, I feel very strongly about the dunes and the wetlands protection, all right? And again, it's not getting revenue back from these things. It's about stopping people from doing it on the front end, because once you damage the wetlands, once you damage the dunes, it is years before they're back.
So I just wanted, wait, I need to step back for a second. So we had the motion from Rick. I know, Mike, you opposed, but did I have a second in there for discussion?
Yeah, we did. Somebody did.
A second for the
Thank
purpose
you.
of discussion.
Thank you. I just want to make sure. Did I have that, Nancy? Mike might have seconded it and then disagreed. Yeah.
The motion?
Oh, the motion.
You want me to read?
No.
The motion was to approve it as presented in the agenda packet.
Yes.
Right.
That's what I'm asking the mayor to do.
Oh, okay, so,
You didn't
yep.
make the motion, I made the motion.
The mayor,
Connie
I,
seconded it.
all right, let's just back up for a second, so we're good here. So I did request a motion to adopt ordinance 2303 as presented, because we all had a chance to review those. Rick had, made the motion, and then I know Mike opposed, but what I was saying was.
Connie seconded.
Connie seconded. That's what I was trying to
Then
find, okay.
I didn't,
All right,
I
I was
don't
just trying to make
oppose
sure
the
it was clear.
motion, I'm just asking that wetlands protection section, each of those bullets be reorganized to put priority on what I think should be the first priority, and that is the property owner is responsible for protecting the wetland.
But Mike, we just had the discussion that as a directive to the town staff to do that. I mean, I would defer to, Mike, I would defer to council.
That's something else entirely.
But at
I
the
would
end of
defer
the
to
day,
council, but I'm pretty sure the homeowner's responsible for what goes on in their property
yes,
regardless.
they are. That was my point, is the homeowner is always responsible for what happens on their property.
Exactly, and it should be the first
But then it
bullet
should be the
under
first
wetland
bullet
protection.
in every ordinance then.
Well, it should be.
So right now, we have a motion, we have a second, we have comments. Do we have any additional comments?
I just like the minutes to reflect the clarification. The restoration portion of the proposed ordinance is to fix whatever you damaged. It's not the ecological evolution over time.
Right.
So I don't want the minutes to say it takes 20 years to repair, but we're requiring them to do it in 7 days. There's a difference. There's a difference
Yes.
between excavating and filling that back in versus once it's filled back in, how long is it going to take ecologically to get back? So I just want that clarification to be made in the
Right, and
minutes.
Brian, we talked about, hang on, we talked about that last time, because that's the point I made.
Right.
You have to have the incentive, if they disturb a dune or wetland, to correct it as soon as possible, all right? And I don't think 7 days is unreasonable with a contractor out there to do that.
Okay, and so my counterpoint would be, you cannot probably find one of those 8 acceptable marsh grasses for sale and get it planted in 7 days. How much trouble we had to order plants from our vendor to replant the dunes that have been restored.
And
Okay.
again, my response real quick on that would be, so if it takes them 2 years to get the grass, are they not allowed to do it for 2 years? I mean, you can go down that path. I think that I would rely on our inspection people to say they made a good faith effort to put it back, and we rely on that, rather than getting into all the details.
I think we need to remember the purpose of the board is to set policy and depend
Yeah.
on our staff.
Well,
Yes,
okay,
sir.
so the spirit and intent of the ordinance is to not mess up the wetlands, and if you do, to fix it,
Right.
okay? I'm oversimplifying it, I know, but, you know, I was a Marine for 30 years, that's gotta be. So, I mean, that's where we are, and then all the other stuff, how it gets done and how long and all that, it's great, but, you know, the idea here, the spirit and intent of the ordinance is pretty darn simple, and I think it's fine the way it is.
Yes, Connie?
And I agree, like Rick said, this is the strict timeline and the high fee is to be a deterrent. We're not trying to make money off it, we're trying to deter people from messing up the wetlands, from destroying anything. Yeah, 7 days is a quick amount of time, but if you know that you have to have that done, maybe it's a deterrent.
And your contractor's there.
And
So-
your contractor's still
So
there.
what I was gonna do, I'm gonna ask the clerk to take the roll. Yeah,
And just-
did you wanna say something,
I just
Brian?
want to make this point again, because if this issue comes up 10 years from now, it's not like whoever's looking at it more than likely weren't sitting in this audience for this discussion. By repair, the ordinance means restore it to
Yeah.
the pre-damaged condition.
Right,
What Alderman Grant referenced is over time, how the root structure of whatever's planted must take and all of that, so.
Different issue.
If they remediate what they damaged, they will satisfy that condition.
yes. Clerk, can you call roll, please?
Alderman Plow,
Aye.
Alderman Leonard,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Benson,
Nay.
Alderman Fontana,
Aye.
Alderman Grant.
So the motion passes, motion carries. The next item is, I'm going to request a motion to amend the town's planning and zoning fee schedule to add a civil citation per the UDO section 1007.6 wetland protection in the amount of $10,000 each for first offense and subsequent offenses.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
I would like the fee schedule amended to reflect that it's a $10,000 fine. If you look at the document, you got 2 decimals and 2 extra zeros under both the oceanfront and the wetlands penalty. Need to get the value correct in the fee schedule.
So you're just asking to correct the numbers.
A grammatical.
Fix the typo in the fee schedule?
That's what he's saying.
Okay.
Okay. Any additional comments? All in favor?
As
Aye.
presented.
As presented with, yes, Mayor Pro Tem's
With
correction.
the,
and
with the
piece-
clerical error correction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay. Under new business, we have a few board members that have to be selected for the planning board and also the Board of Adjustments. There's 2 for each, so we will walk through one at a time. And Nancy was also kind enough to give us, a document about this process today, but along with the motion, we need to make sure that we include that we're filling the vacancy for what the term is. Okay,
And,
so,
and just for procedural clarification, so this will be a motion and vote procedure?
yes, sir.
Okay. Also, there's been, in the last few months, discussions about policies and procedures and code of ethics for the various appointed boards. I think, I would recommend any motion, and maybe, Madam Clerk, help me here, but we can premise any motion to appoint someone to serve whatever term at the pleasure of the board, subject to any code of ethics policies and procedures adopted by the board as may be amended. So is there a consensus that any motion to appoint someone will be on those grounds, so you don't have to
Yes.
repeat that every time?
Yes.
Madam Clerk, does that satisfy you?
And
Can I
from,
make a motion?
from what, well, I just want to also make sure that I'm clear. It looks to me like both of them have similar, if not the same, expiration dates. So one expiration date being May 15th, 2024, and the other being May 15th, 2026. Is that correct, Nancy? Is that what you had too? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just ask for, I wanted to see if anybody has a nomination. Let's start with the planning board.
I would like to nominate,
Well,
Yes, sir.
if you're going motion and vote, it'd be a motion to appoint person X.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Terry Ward. Terry? Terry
is planning
Ward to
board.
the vacancy on the planning board for the term ending May 15th, 26.
I'll second.
Subject to the,
Subject to
To the
the
terms
the
I-
terms and conditions that we
yeah.
just described.
So we have a second?
Fred did.
I second.
Fred
Yes. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So then we have one more. So do we have a motion to appoint any additional? Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
I would like to nominate Susan Meyer, oh, not nominate.
you'd move to appoint.
I move to appoint Susan Meyer under the same conditions.
And then Susan's expiration date, according to my notes, would be May 15th, 24.
Yes.
Okay, so do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. So we're going to follow the same procedure then for the Board of Adjustment, where we also have 2 openings. So do we have anybody?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
There's 2 reappointments on the planning board, No. That's Board of Adjustment. But you have 2 terms. I don't have the sheet in front of me. Is it
So
your-
the folks that the board just appointed would take the place of those who reappointed?
No. You still have 2 vacancies. You have 2 current members whose terms have expired. You need to, additionally, who also need to be either reappointed or someone else appointed.
Right, so someone else, we just appointed those 2 folks to take the place of those who have expired terms.
Oh, okay, then you still have 2 vacancies.
I thought, from what I read, from statute, there has to be 3 members.
Right,
So
we
you're
don't-
changing your board composition from 5 to 3?
I'm asking.
Statutorily, it's 3, but your board,
No, it's not. Statutorily, it's not. Board of Adjustment is statutorily 5. I don't
But
think the
we're
planning
still
board's
on-
got a statutory quorum.
we're still, yeah, they do, we're still on planning board, is my understanding.
We're still
Correct
on
me.
planning board right now.
Yes,
Ryan, I thought there's no statutory requirement for the planning board.
it's 3.
It isn't both, it's in the ordinance, you'd have to change the ordinance to change the composition both for the regular members as well as for the alternates. And you've got two alternates for the planning board, and you have 4 alternates for the Board of Adjustments.
Right, but there's no requirement to fill the alternate spots.
There is no requirement to fill the alternate spots, but those positions still exist.
As far as the composition, North Carolina General Statute 160D-301, subsection A1, a planning board of any size or composition deemed appropriate. So, from a statutory perspective, I think that's deferred to the local government, who must establish the planning board by ordinance. If we have adopted an ordinance with 5 members, then until that ordinance is changed, we are required to have 5 seats. You can have vacancies, it's up to you. I don't know if that clarifies or conflates the issue, but
From the information we've been given, there are 2 vacancies that need to be filled,
Which we did.
which we just did. So that's what I'm trying to understand, where the discrepancy is.
On your 5-member board right now, you have 3 positions filled, and you have 2 vacancies. Of those 3 positions filled, you have 2 of those terms that expired last May. So they need to either be reappointed, or you need to appoint someone else for those terms. Or leave them vacant if you want to only have a 3-member board.
I would leave them vacant, because I think we were under the impression that we were only filling 2 spots.
That we were.
All right, so we now have the 3 that we need for a quorum, and then if we want to bring this back up for other people, because like I said, I went back and looked at, and I would support the 2 that we put in there. But I also think that I was under the impression we just had to have 2 come in, from what I read.
Right, that's what's been presented to us.
Right.
But Madam Clerk, this is very important, we get this straight, or I get it straight in my head at least. The last 2 appointees, was it the board's intention to appoint those to seats with expired terms?
Yes.
Yes.
Was that your understanding, Madam Clerk?
No, but I will put that in the minutes, that you were appointing just for the expired seats.
Yes.
Can we call for a motion to clarify that that was the intention of both motions in a vote, please?
So moved.
Because I think the motion, well, okay.
Is there a second?
Hold on, it's not open for discussion. So there was a motion and there was a second to that. All in favor?
Aye.
So everybody on the board clearly understands and agrees that the 2 motions to appoint were for the expired terms on the planning board.
Yes.
Madam Clerk, does that satisfy you?
And then my next question on that, are we clear that that's enough for a quorum, and then any additional openings right now would be vacancies? Right? That's what the board is,
I'm sorry. It's only because that's the way we read it. I just think we need to give it more consideration.
well, right, I don't want to rush into something.
I suggest that we do what we've done, fill the 2 expired terms, and then look at the other applicants and bring it back, if we so choose, next month to fill the vacancies.
Yep, I agree.
All in
Agreed.
favor? All good?
Aye.
Aye.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
And second?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, so then what we'll do is we'll move on to the Board of Adjustments, and we're going to follow the same process. So just to be clear up front, what we're doing is we're filling the 2 expired terms on the Board of Adjustments.
Yes.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to, I'm sorry, Alderman Leonard, do you have a question?
No, I was gonna make a motion
Okay, go
that we appoint Kip Malcolm to fill.
Oh, he beat me to it.
So we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And so that
Thanks, Kip.
term, there's 2 terms, so Alderman Leonard, were you making your motion for May 15th, 24, or 26?
26.
Clerk, did you have that? Okay. And then So then we're looking for one more motion.
Was that a vote? Did I vote on
It
that
was,
one?
it was unanimous.
It was unanimous, yeah. So we need one more motion.
Connie?
Connie's thinking.
Well, I was gonna motion for Kip.
Go ahead,
Make the motion that we appoint Stu Harns for the other expired term.
Second.
So we have a motion, we have a second. We
Who
have
was
all
the
in
second?
favor?
Stu Hawes.
Me?
Rick,
Thank you.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No. Nay.
Okay. And then, so we'll have the same question for the group. If there are vacancies on the Board of Adjustments after the vote today for the expired terms, if we could please bring that back to the board for next month.
Could, just one point of order, Mr. Attorney. She stepped out. I believe they actually have 7 members. I don't have that sheet in front of me on the planning board. And
The
I don't
planning
remember
board
how many
has-
alternates. So a quorum would be 4. Do we have enough alternates?
It says there's 7 regular members. The statute requires at least 3, and then they have 2 alternates with no statutory requirement.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm just making myself a note. Okay. All right.
2 alternates, correct?
We're leaving it open for now, and I think we'll do it for the top of that.
Right, we had planned today only regarding the expired term, so I don't want to make any rash decisions. I don't want anybody on the board to feel that they have to, so we'll come back next month with any additional vacancies and work through those.
You said we had plans. I think you meant we had an understanding that we were only doing 2.
Well, I just mean the information that came in the
Gotcha,
board
yeah.
packet. It said there were 2
Again,
expired.
The minutes aren't going to have any
Understand.
explanation down the road, so.
Understand. Thank you, Brian. Okay, so the next item then is Mr. Grant with your activities update.
you pull that up?
Ricky, don't lose that number.
We have a 5-minute break.
Yeah, can we call
Yes,
him?
why don't we take a 5-minute break while Rick is getting ready anyway.
This is
Brad
like the
needs to get
7th
it.
inning stretch. We're gonna say, take me out to the ball game?
What is the alternate?
This
Rick.
exchange.
Zero time.
Yeah, yeah, right.
credit and blame for this. A number of these guys have not seen this presentation before. And what I did was I went back, and everything that I've got in this presentation can be taken off the town website and the town's thing. And what I found is there's an awful lot of information out there.
Do you think the folks in the back could maybe stop so we can hear the presenter, please?
So anyway,
Thank you.
I remember the first time that Joanne had me go meet with the county. As we were sitting there, we walked in, and she was having me present some numbers to them. And I don't know if you remember the first thing I said to them, because I'd never met them before, and I said, I know you guys are going to really find this amazing, but everything on Facebook's not true. And the whole room busted out laughing. And the problem is when you use social media as a way of communicating, it becomes a problem. So I went through, and again, this is me putting this together, so to the extent, and I apologize to my other aldermen about this, I thank some of the staff for giving me some numbers, but I put this presentation together. So Ricky hit it. All right, so if you look at the major activities that we've done in this town, this is just over the last couple of years. If you look at the first one, and I'll get into more detail on these as I go through the slide, we've got over $40 million worth of beach projects that have been completed or under contract since 2019, 2020. Pretty amazing for a town this size. We've obtained over $12 million in grants. Again, I'll get into the details on these later on. We got a fire truck loan at 0% interest. We've paid off over $7 million in the Phase 5 USDA loan. And for people that don't remember, we had a $15 million loan related to Phase 5 construction in 2015, I believe. Still hadn't been paid off. And I'll talk about it later, but the interesting thing about that, when you look at other projects, there was a side letter that was done with the local government commission, that said we had to pay that off before we could do another beach project. So whatever project you were looking at, until that got paid off, we couldn't do anything. We refinanced this a couple years ago, and she's not here, 3%, 3.5%, Caitlin? All right, paid off a bunch of it, flipped it to this loan, and it'll be paid off in actually one payment this year and then 3 more. Taking that off the burden of us, and also we were able to do it before interest rates popped up. So it's a huge, huge move forward in terms of what we can do. 30-year beach plan, you guys heard Chris talk today. That's going to be the architect of that. Terry's on the BISAC committee. And I think our plan there, and I'll talk about a little bit more, is people understanding that we've got to basically do the whole beach. And I think the commitment is to continue to do something every year on the beach and not be behind the ball. Cobra process, Tom just talked about. Capital Project Fund, Mike came to me, annoying me as heck, and we talked about there was no capital budget. And now we're putting money away, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We're putting money away for the firehouse. We're putting away money knowing, and this was a couple years ago before the interest rate spike is, that, and I made it very clear in those meetings, we got to quit borrowing. We've got to have money to put down to do these projects, because not knowing interest rates were going to go up like they've gone up, but knowing they would eventually go up, if we didn't get money to be able to do these projects and put it away, we're not going to be able to do those projects. Bike lane study, which is a good one. Thank you. And the other one was interesting is I keep hearing about, oh, you know, the towns, this is mismanaged or whatever. We've had clean audits. Not only have we had clean audits, but right now the balance sheet and the financial of this town is better, I think, than it's ever been. And one of the interesting things on that is I think people understand on the Phase 4 project that we're going to do, all the projects that involve the federal or state are reimbursed projects. Meaning you got to put the money out and wait for it to come back. And generally what happens in those is that last 25% doesn't come back for a while. And you've got to have the millions of dollars to get those things done. Interesting thing from talking to Caitlin, and she can tell me if I'm wrong, is we are sound enough financially that for the Phase 4 project, we're not going to have to borrow money. That is that is saving us hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. All right. Where does the money go? Or where does the money come from? Interesting. There's four major sources of revenue that would come in, and that's not including the grants and stuff that I'll talk about in a minute. Property taxes, $6.9 million. 26 cents out of the 43 goes to the general fund, 10 goes to the beach fund, And as Mike knows, we've pushed 7 cents into the capital fund every year to make sure we've got that in there. Sales tax, 2.6 million, split between the general fund and the beach fund. Here's the interesting part about sales tax. We don't generate $2.6 million worth of sales tax in here. There's an agreement, and people talk about how in the accommodation tax, we only get half of it back from the county. Keep in mind, the allocation on those two things, if you think about sales tax and assets, we get that, but we get a huge disproportionate piece of the sales tax. That's 2.6 million that comes in from the sales tax we've got, and I think anybody that's looking around here for commercial establishments realizes we don't generate 2.6 million. So that's an allocation and apparently a structure that was put in place and a balance between us and some of the other towns in Onslow County that we get a disproportionate share of sales tax and they get to keep some of our accommodation tax. So it's a balance, but my calculation is we're way ahead in that. Accommodation fees, that's the rental fees that come in. Interesting comment that I read the other day, which I thought was kind of funny, is why don't we increase that? Problem is, that's a state tax. We cannot do it. As I understand it, there's only one county in North Carolina that gets more than the 6% max, and was it Mecklenburg? Is that where the capital is? And it was a one-shot deal. I can tell you that none of the people that do vacation rentals want that 6% to go up. So we're already at the max. We have no control over that. The only tax that we have any control over is property taxes. That's it. All right. So, and again, that's something where people do. And we get the parking fees. 75% goes to the beach. The other thing interesting in the accommodation fees, if you look at that footnote or that note, is it all has to go to the beach. So that's going to help us fund beach projects going forward. Rick? Largest budgeted expense. And I'll be hitting some of the urban legends, and I know that Terry knows this because we've presented this already. The single largest expense that this town has is paying off the Phase 5 beach loan, by far. Okay, it's more than the fire department, it's more than the police department. So $2 million is going out to pay off that loan. The interesting part of that is we're going to have it paid off, what, 4 years now? 4 more payments, Caitlin? When that happens, that'll be $2 million more in the beach fund to be able to get things done, to be able to build our beaches. But that's one of those urban legends. Where's the money going to? 20% of your budget's going to pay off that loan. Next. Why did my property taxes increase? How many people know that of every dollar that you pay in property tax, the town only keeps 40 cents? I mean, people don't realize that. 40% of property taxes stay here. The other 60% goes to the county. All right? And so I'll do an interesting calculation. What happened was every 4 years, the county does what's called a revaluation. Revaluation. They go out and they take a look at individual properties and everybody gets a thing. On average, in this town, it went up 55% in 4 years. Personally, my house went up over 100%. My taxes more than doubled. And I said to my wife, what is going on with this? And she said, that's what they're selling for. And if you look around, that's what the properties are selling for. The thing that bothers, I think, me, and Connie has talked about this a lot, is the people that live here full time, that are not renting their houses out, that's a direct expense to us. The people that are renting their houses out have seen their rents go up pretty dramatically, really dramatically, more than that, right? I mean, there's one I had heard towards the Surf City line, we're renting for more than $20,000 a week. So having, if I'm looking at something like that and I'm getting that kind of rents, I've talked to people on the beach that told me they rented that one house for X and it's 2.5 times that today, 3 years later. That's how much rents have gone up, and Caitlin will show you that we're getting more accommodation taxes because of that. But what that also tells you is the value of the houses are going up, right? And I don't know about anybody here. I haven't seen anybody build a 1,500 square foot beach house anytime soon. I mean, most of what's getting built today are rentals, right? People, and that's fine. It's a tax-based issue, whatever, but it's also kind of an interesting thing. Both towns at the revaluation dropped their tax rate. The reason your taxes went up is because the value of your house went up. I understand from people who've been here a while, there was a devaluation at 1.2. So even though we dropped the rate, Onslow dropped the rate, right? Taxes still went up because the property value went up. And I'm gonna pull this whiteboard here with a couple of examples that I like to, and one of them I figured out this morning at 4:30, so bear with me.
We'll check the math on that one.
You'll have to, I'll turn this around after I do it. All right, so what I found interesting, if I can make this thing work.
Just press it in.
All right. What I found interesting is, I did a couple of just math calculations. Everybody that knows my background, don't laugh, Chris, all right? My career's been running businesses, all right? And what I found was interesting is, so now I have, here's Rick's house at $500,000, right? And my reval went up 100%. So now my reval is $1 million. Using, and I rounded the 60-40 to use, because otherwise the math gets really complicated. So you get about $1, all right, and this ends up being, my taxes are $5,000. Everybody with me so far? Same tax rate, $1 million bucks, what's my taxes now? 10,000. Here's what came to me last night when I talked about that. Average went up 55% in the town. So, draw a line here. So now my $500,000 house, okay, is worth about $800,000. I'm using round numbers to make it easy. The county, all right, is going to charge 60 cents. All right, so county had 3,000 before. Now it's 60 cents times this is $4,800 that the county's going to get. All right. Why is that interesting? How much did I pay before the revaluation in total? If the town said, oh no, I don't want any taxes to go up, we would have to drop our property tax rate by 95%. We'd have to go from 43 cents to 2.5 cents. We're out of business. Literally, you shut the town down. We couldn't pay for anything. You're gonna lose $6.3 million in property taxes if you did that. First off, nobody would let us do that, including the LGC. But when I looked at that, two things that people don't realize. One, only 40% of your property taxes stay here. So when people talk about, oh, my taxes went up, oh my God, 40% stays here, 60% goes to the county. Second thing is, it had nothing to do with the rate. It had to do with what the value of your home went up. And what's interesting is that there's actually, it's pretty cool. On the Onslow County website, they have an interactive map where you can go in there and you can look at your neighborhood to find out how much your neighborhood went up. Because remember, the average was 55%, but everybody's individual property was handled differently. And you can tap on your area. I found this little tidbit that kind of made me nervous is, where I live went up 115% on average. So some people got hit harder, some people got hit less, but it's by individual property. They literally do a valuation of your home, and it's done by the county, not by us. So again, keep those things in mind as we're going through.
Rick, can I interrupt you a second? And then maybe you're gonna mention it, but
Yeah.
you could also, if you think you're paying too much taxes when it did get reevaluated.
It's in a slide. It's in a slide. If you look up there, you're allowed to appeal your valuation. And you can appeal it every year. So if you think it's too high or too low, go back. Like I said, my wife is a CPA, MBA with 2 master's degrees, and what she told me is good luck. Because the house next door is selling for what they just told your house is worth. And so, you know, yeah, really. You know, I mean, it's funny because everybody goes, well, that's great, you got more equity. That's fine, but not if I'm gonna live here, okay? Because buying and selling in the same market is not really a good business plan, right? Especially because what's your home interest rate now if you go buy a house? 7.5%. That's huge. So anyway, it's a good point. I'm sorry, I'll turn this thing around for you guys to look at now. But the reality in this thing is, and again, it was just from picking up comments, talking to people, and we do it is, how many people didn't understand that the majority of the property taxes don't go here? Because that was the complaint is, what's the town doing with all my money? And the answer is, we're only getting a piece of it. And it's gone into the projects that we're gonna talk about in a minute. Ricky. Where does the money go? Go ahead, next. All right, this is shoreline protection. This is Terry's and my and the BISAC committee. Look at how much money is going into the beach now. Okay, 31% of all the revenue coming into the town is going into the beach. And the members of BISAC committee, I would really like it if people could go to that. It's very interesting because our beach engineer here tells us we're gonna have to have close to $4 million a year forever to make sure we keep the beach, because without the beach, we're out of town. You know, I know most people come here for the bicycle lanes and stuff, but we're a beach town. And one of the things that we've committed to, I think, as a committee, and again, Terry's in that committee, is you gotta put the money in every year. You've gotta have it, and borrowing at what borrowing rates are gonna be going forward is gonna be really problematic for the town. Once that loan goes away, all right, and if you look at the breakdown in there, right, once we get rid of that $2 million, and you know, combination taxes will go up and down or whatever, okay, once we get rid of that $2 million, we've got the money to do it without raising taxes. And that's the game plan, is to say we don't need to do that. We're gonna be able to not have to borrow money. We're gonna be able to do those projects for the town. And I think that's why I said fiscally, this is the strongest I've ever seen it. And I like where we are as a town right now. Future projects are in there, the New River EIS, also known as the groin. Although Chris is looking at a lot of different options in terms of that. Sea oats and vitex removal, the 30-year beach plan's got a little bit, and sandbag repair. That's where $4 million, 31% of the total budget is going into the beach today. Ricky? What else? Capital improvements. 12.5% of the revenues of the town are going into a capital fund. Again, we can't borrow forever on these things. We got a new firehouse that, in my opinion, should have replaced 5 years ago. The cost of that, everybody in this room knows what costs have done in the last couple of years. Up, right? We're trying to do stuff so that we can go, and maybe we'll have to finance some of this stuff. I think that Alice is very good at getting that 0% loan for the fire truck. We're gonna try to go to the state to get money for the firehouse, but you're talking $5 to $7 million to that firehouse. And I would suggest anybody that doesn't wanna, once they have a bad day, and I'm seeing the chief back there, go down and take a look at what that firehouse looks like inside. Those guys were getting rained on, right? We're putting money away because we know that there's project this town has to do. And again, the idea, and we talked about this when we set the board and we set the rates, as Connie brought it up, is the idea is we don't want to have to go back for increases. And having discussions, I had a lot of discussions with the county about what they were going to do in their tax rate. And the one thing that came back to me, which I shared with the people up here, is every town that tried to go revenue neutral, okay, there might have been 1 or 2 exceptions, was back in for an increase in the rates almost immediately. All right, and everybody knows what inflation's done. All right, the idea is to stay out, fund this stuff ourselves, and not have to do that. Next. General fund, everything else. Fire department's in there, police department's in there, planning's in there, public works, contingency and administration. I think it's a pretty lean budget. And you look, Alice has been very good at going out and finding other money. Grants for drones, grants for this, grants for that. Trying to find every bit of money, and she chases that stuff. We've been able to bring those dollars in to cut costs and to do stuff going forward. Keep in mind, everybody saw, what, 8% inflation last year. You're still at, what, 4 or 5% inflation. Again, it's trying to manage the town's business in such a way, all right, that we don't have to go back for taxes, and we are doing planning, long-term planning. When I joined the board, I've never run a business where I didn't have a 5-year plan. All right, and as I said to our fire chief, when he put the first 5, this is before Alice has got here, I said, I want to know where the gorilla is. I don't want to hear I got nothing for 5 years and then I've got to buy a gorilla. Where are those fire trucks? Chief, when's the last fire truck you bought?
I bought one in 2014.
All right, 9 years young is the newest fire truck we have. We've got to start planning for this stuff because costs are going up. And contingency. We never built contingency funds before. One big storm comes through in here and that'll get wiped out in no time. Financially secure, watching your money, doing those type of things. Ricky, next. County partnership. If you want fun, Kip has already volunteered to go with me, I go to every one of the county board meetings. And what we've got with them is a very cooperative relationship right now. Interesting thing that happened with them. The chairman of the commission and the county manager grabbed me in one of those meetings after talking to my compatriots up here. They wanted to do a fire tax. I didn't realize how many volunteer fire departments there are in Onslow County. We're blessed to have our own fire department, right? They talked to me, they've agreed to kick back 3 cents out of every dollar, every 3 cents in the property tax they're collecting back to us, as long as we use it for fire station or fire trucks and stuff. It's $500,000 a year. All right, we've got an agreement with them. That money's going to keep coming in. That's going to fund it. Again, money coming back to the town. Also, and Joanne and I met with them the first time on this one, begging them for money to pay off that loan. They've put, and has it always been 150? They're really tight right now. But the last couple of years, they're giving us $150,000 to help pay off that loan as well, in working with them. We got, as Kip knows, we got $10,000 for them, and hopefully we can do more than that. Also, we've got a working group on the infrastructure. I think everybody here knows we've got problems, not with us, within Onslow County because of growth. Water stuff, power, all that kind of stuff is we've got to do something. We're working with the water company. I just joined the board of Onslow, Wassa. Water company, us, county, okay, trying to figure out how to handle this stuff. I was shocked when the assistant county manager came down here and we were talking about all the stuff that's going on here. He says, we've got more stuff approved up there, okay, than like double what you guys are seeing out here. That's how much is going on in Onslow. Next. Grant. $10.5 million for phase 4. Beautiful part of this guy, Alice, board working together. This is one that I was very surprised that we pulled off. We got this money, it's a matching grant. We had to put up $10.5 million matching to get the $10.5 million. The two of these guys worked together and said, the phase 5 stuff we're doing for FEMA, they let us use that as the match, so we didn't have to put up any money from the town. $10.5 million matching grant we got with 0 cost. That's pretty amazing, and that's the stuff that's going to go on in phase 4. Cybersecurity, Alice just talked about. FEMA Go. If you look at all the stuff that's come in, all right, where the town sees money that can come in, we've been going after that money constantly. Ricky. Onslow County Fire Department I talked about, and the debt assistance. Go ahead. All right, now, and Terry has seen this, shows the BISAC committee. The next 2 slides are getting rid of the urban legends, okay? Where has all the money been spent? This comes from a slide, and you'll see the next slide, that our beach engineer, Fran Way, put together. I've heard people say in the south, all the money was spent in the north. I've heard people in the north say all the money was spent in the south. Here's the reality, is of the $70 million spent or to be spent, right? Phase 5, the south, 60% of the total and almost 70% of the town's money has been spent in phase 5. That was a shock to people. Last election, I met a lady in Carlos from phase 5, and she said, why don't you do anything for us in phase 5? And I said, well, you here in 2015. She goes, oh, that was great. You know, and so, and that was the whole thing. Remember phase 5, we want to understand 70% of the town's money and 60% of all the beach projects have been spent in phase 5. That's okay though, because we have to look at it as one town and one beach. Phase 5 is now an engineered beach, which means now, and Chris can deal with that too, is instead of just doing dunes after storm, we can now do dunes and beach. And if you're not an engineered beach, you only get dunes. That's why we're able to get a lot more sand in this area. And as we've talked about in the BISAC thing, if we can convert the whole town to an engineered beach, it gives us that much more protection. Is that a fair way to put it, Chris? Phase 4, a little bit. Phase 1, 16 and 30%. I live in phase 3, so I apologize to everybody in phase 3 because clearly I'm not looking out for us because we've got nothing being spent where I live. But it's an interesting thing. Go to the next slide. And this is actually given to me by Fran, except it's an Excel spreadsheet, so my lovely wife allowed me to do the percentages and stuff at the bottom, all right, to show you. But again, the urban legend was everything was spent in the north, right? All the money was spent in the north. It's not true. The majority of the money's been spent in the south, and that's okay. We built that beach now. So now we can move forward. Next. All right, my favorite. of all time. Why did we stop doing the Army Corps of Engineers project? Oh my gosh. Answer is, prices went crazy and there's no way we could afford it. Not only that, in dealing with our outside financial advisor, any deal like this would have to be approved by the local government commission. Thank you. We were told there's zero chance they would do it, which means it was dead on arrival because the economics changed so much. And also remember, we already had $15 million in loans sitting in phase 5, which is where this project was. And also remember what we talked about before is, guess what? You had to pay that loan off before you could do another beach project. All right? Kind of changed your economics. Amounts excluded from the financing, and this is what happened, and I had just joined the board, and this was the gap. Because I think originally the town was trying to figure out a way to do it, and we were working with Doug Carter, their outside guy. What happened was there was a clause in that contract that said if it's, and it's in the next slide, if it's an undeveloped area of the town, you get 0 federal funding. You have to still do it, you get 0 federal and 0 state. So now, it was about 12% of this project gets kicked out, it's 100% our dime. And here's the kicker, you gotta put the money up front. We went from having to borrow like $23 million to do the project to having to put $19 million up front and borrow 20. That's how bad the economics got. It's impossible. There's no way the town could afford to pay for it. And so you can see the stuff in there. So, and also remember that there is also a renourishment requirement in that. Every 6 years, you're required to go back in. 2 things. One is the percentage funding by the feds went down. And 2 is there's no guarantee that the state, who is picking up a portion of that first one, was going to pick up the second portion. So we're looking at a substantial increase. Next slide. And this is the one that's my favorite. This is what the Army Corps gave us. All right? Take a look at it, and it's hard to read a little bit. But if you look at the best case and the last column, they give it to Surf City and to us. All right? So if you look at it, it's talking about estimated to Surf City. It's the second from the right. Here, I'll point to you guys. I'll over here. They've already seen this. All right. Estimated cost. All right? Now, this is the refurbishment we talked about. The interesting part about this, these estimates were done in 2018. Anybody believe costs have gone down since 2018? Or do you think that's a low number? All right? Here's the part I was talking about. The worst case to find is all undeveloped private lands and privately owned lots with no public access, 100% non-fed cost. That's what kicked this thing, so it became impossible for us to be able to do this thing. Look at the difference in cost between, that's what we thought it was going to be, borrowed maybe, to that. All right? And when we found out as a town, didn't have the money, that you had to put $19 million up front before they would even start the process. With a town that had $15 million in debt in that area already. And we're gonna have to borrow another $20+ million on top of that. And guess what, gang? You gotta do it every 6 years. All right? For a town with $11 million in revenue, and, oh, the other thing the LGC told us is that on the original USDA loan, I think it was it 20-year was the original amortization? All right. Right. There was a side letter that said you're supposed to pay it off, right? They told our financial consultant, and you can confirm this, no more than 6 years. No more than 6 years, because guess what? The sand ain't there after 6 years. And so you had to do that every 6 years. You had to make that commitment to do it. And again, that's with less federal funding and also perhaps no state funding. So when I ran, go back one if you can. When I was running the numbers, and I think that 7 actually is 9, all right? It is, actually. If you look at the annual cost to do this, it was going to be $7 million a year. And that doesn't include paying off the $2 million loan. And that's if you could even finance it. Talking about $9 million a year for a town that's got $11 million in revenue. I couldn't make that math work. I remember sitting next to Mike, and he just looked at me in shock. We got that number. It was like, this is dead on arrival. And you got your financial expert telling you there's no way. So what we did instead is we decided to go the Topsail way, and he sits right there. How much money did Topsail spend out of their pocket to redo their beaches?
We've spent, About 8 million out of 75.
How do you like that ratio? 8 million out of 75. Look what we're starting to do, the phase 4 project, everything else. That's the game plan. And I know Tara sits on that committee. The whole idea is leveraging this stuff, finding matching grants, getting it done. But again, and you made it clear to us, you can't keep doing this stuff one-off. You've got to have a big beach plan, and you've got to put the money in every year to be able to get the beach done. That's our biggest asset. Yes, I can see that to you, Michael, because I thought public safety was first. Okay, but the biggest asset we have is that beach. If we don't maintain that beach, we have a problem with the town. Questions?
Questions from the board?
Sure.
Questions from the board?
Actually,
Again, they hadn't seen this, so. And one other thing, I'm gonna post this on the Facebook sites, okay? It's not gonna be a debate. I don't, if you got a question, my email address will be on there, okay? Social media is not the place. First off, the only real Facebook page that's accurate is the town's Facebook page, all right? The rest of it is other opinions or private stuff. And what I'm gonna do is, because how long and colluded, this is going on, I'm gonna post 1 or 2 pages every day with a short explanation of what the slide says. And the next day do a couple more, the next day a couple more. I would ask that, this is on, if you look at the agenda today, you can click on the presentation. I would ask you to share this with people, all right? Because these are the facts, all right? You can get this right off our website if you're willing to spend the 100 hours it took me to put it together. This is our town, but that's our information, all right? And those are the real numbers.
So I know Alderman Leonard has a comment. I just wanted to just make sure that everybody in the audience and listening today is aware that you have volunteered to come and do the same presentation for any of the HOAs. I was thinking about Ocean City as well. I was going to reach out to Mr. Chestnut. So it's good that Kip is here. But yeah, I mean, Rick has put a lot of time and effort into this, and certainly the board appreciates any comments and feedback that we get back to. So go ahead.
my question was whether or not you were gonna hang it on the webpage or somewhere, and that's great. A couple.
I don't know if
yeah.
I'm allowed to put it on our webpage. I'll leave it to you guys, because that would be a
That'll be
conflict for me.
yeah.
But
I mean, it's part of a meeting.
Just so you know, I've been reaching out to
It's in
different
the-
HOAs
it's in the
trying to
packet.
make this
I was
presentation
not done,
to
but
people,
that's
because
okay.
it's complicated. And, without the explanation, like I said, my favorite slides are the end of the urban, where's the money being spent? It's all being spent somebody that's not me. Okay, or the other one is, the Army Corps project is never going to happen for the simple reason, one, we can never pay for it, we can never get it approved. All right, that's the reality. All right, and for the town to commit those kind of money on top of the 15 down there, I remember Dick Peters, as we all know, we're coming back from a meeting, and he turned to me on this one, he says, well, Rick, what happens if we do this project? I said, that's the last project we'll ever do. You'll never have money to do another project in the town, because you're tying up $9 million a year. Even if you could do it, you'd never have another project.
Okay.
So I did have a couple follow-ons, Rick. The one I wanted to mention was the occupancy tax threshold at 6%. Back in '21, the mayor and then manager Dave Gilbride and I went to Raleigh to the state legislature and petitioned for a 1 cent occupancy tax increase, and it got through the first subcommittee or committee, but then it fell flat. You mentioned Mecklenburg County.
Hang on, before you leave that, just one thing. One of the things that I saw posted on Facebook at that time was, the county turned you down.
No, the county was
Hang on a
with
second.
us.
I talked to the county. They knew we had to go to them first before we went to the legislature, all right? There's no way that they could give us that. They didn't have the money to give us.
Well,
So they
no,
didn't
it was-
turn us down. They aided us in going to the legislature.
They didn't do anything because we went through Phil Shepard, and Phil Shepard escorted us in, and he introduced us to the folks, including State Representative Bobby Hanning, who we've met up at Byways, who was the chair for that subcommittee, and Bobby pretty much told his subcommittee what he wanted, and we got a unanimous approval at that level, but that was where it stopped. But it is Mecklenburg County, and the extra 1 cent occupancy tax had to do with when they were constructing Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Yeah,
That's what it was for. The other thing I wanted to mention is the assessments, the evaluations. We got ours we'd recently had a refi. We had a fairly recent appraisal for the refi, and ours came in at like $400K more than it was before. And sent everything in and did it online. Didn't even have to go to Onslow County offices. And they dropped the value of the house $225,000 for tax purposes.
And you need to go, I'm not trying to give you legal advice, but if you're trying to do something in your revalue, you need to have somebody take a look at it independent, and that would be your basis. When I talked to the guy that was doing that headed it up at one of those board meetings, he said, you're free, because one of the questions I asked him is, they've got some of these non-buildable lots on the ocean, little ones, that they were valued. I said, how can you value, one down the street sold for $50,000. You're telling two up from them the same thing is worth 500. He goes, come in and tell us that. And we'll make the adjustment. So.
Well, and Rick, that's something that they can contact them each year. You don't have to wait till the 4 years.
You don't have to wait for the reval. You can do it every year.
And one word of caution, though, when they reevaluate, they may reevaluate it up as well. So just make sure that they're going to evaluate it down before you ask for the reval.
So when we got ours, I did it through the email. I did it online. I get an email that says, "Hey, we've dropped it from this down to this," and they said, "Now you can either accept this evaluation, or you can appeal this one with the understanding." Like you said, Fred, it may go up and it may go down. And I thought, nah, this looks pretty good to me.
I would never do it unless I had a piece of paper from a professional, like somebody that had done appraisals telling me my house is worth a different number. But like I said, I mean, you guys, look at the property that's being sold right now. Look at the prices of stuff that's going off. It's crazy. Tom, anything else? No, sir.
No, I think we need to move on though.
Okay. Anyway, please, when I post this, please share this with as many people as you can. Those are the numbers, that's the facts of the town. I feel very good about where we are, especially last couple of years. I think we've made a lot of progress. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is open forum. Do we have anybody? Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry, I added my, thank you, Fred. So I did add an item to talk about the 28th, and what we had wanted to do, and we did gain approval to be able to do it, is to have a candidates forum here at Town Hall on the 28th. I don't have any details surrounding that yet, but I wanted to get a date out there, and I'll put something out on social media so that all candidates are aware of that as well. So I do have some travel plans personally coming up, so I appreciate the fact that there's multiple forums to be able to meet the candidates, because I'm not the only one with other things that come up. So I appreciate that Susan is doing or assisting with one. I know Mr. Fowler's also assisting with one, so to have one here too, I think that gives the residents a lot of different options as far as being able to come in and talk to the candidates and meet them. So I don't need a motion on that. I just...
Can I just make one?
Yeah.
Just so people understand, though, I think the structure we're going to be looking for is going to be a debate. You're going to be able to do your thing instead of just because I think, one of the issues is, what do you stand for? What are you going to do? Those type of things would be important. So you can ask questions, rather than just doing that. And I think the plan is to live stream it, record it, and then put it on the website so that people can attend, can see how the candidates act and how they answer questions. I mean, to me, that's the fair way to do it.
Okay, so more information will come out on that. Any comments on that from anybody up here? Okay. And then we're going to move on to the open forum. Do we have anybody signed up for that one? Is there anybody that would like to speak? Yes, go ahead, Chris. You can yell from there if you want. We know who you are.
I'm going to press the red button. You got it. The one thing I heard today that I thought would be good to ask of the town. You talked about shrubbery removal, etc., and that y'all were going to mulch it and provide that as mulch for everybody. Yeah. Just be careful nobody puts beach vitex in that, because now you're seeding it everywhere all over the island. So just a thought on that one.
We're going to have an identification workshop so people know what Vitex looks like.
Okay, then we're going to move on to the attorney's report. Okay, and we'll start with Ms. Plato.
I just wanted to thank Alice and the town staff for yet another tropical storm that we seem to fly through very well. Very happy that we didn't have anything worse, and this gives us real good practice in case something else does come up. Everybody's been doing a really great job. We have the Halloween event this month. Everybody come on out, and that's all I have right now.
Alderman
Thanks.
Leonard?
I appreciate everybody coming out. The only thing I have is to remind everyone that on the 23rd of this month, we'll observe the 40-year observance of the Beirut bombing, which was for this area, the units were all assigned from Camp Lejeune that were in the barracks that blew up in Beirut. There will be a ceremony over at the Beirut Memorial in Jacksonville at 10 o'clock on the morning of the 23rd, which unfortunately I will not be able to attend because I'm going to be out of town. But anyone who's interested, there's plenty of information out there. But that's all I have.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody that attended today. We had one of the best attendance, and I'm sure people watching online. Manager Dury and I attended the long-term memorandum of agreement workshop or quarterly meeting a couple weeks ago. And the only thing to report from that meeting, well, two things. It was decided that for the shallow draft inlet, which is a 1-to-3 match for local communities to keep their inlets navigable, only local communities can apply for those funds. There was an effort underway apparently at some higher level that the Army Corps would be able to use those shallow draft funds for the memorandum of agreement work, but that's not the case. The other thing is the Army Corps only has like 3 dredges for all of the East Coast. And so you've seen the merit in the New River Inlet from time to time. They expect it back on the middle of November. And it looks like the channel going straight out might be opening up across the bar, so they might try to dredge that channel, which will save mariners a little bit of time of getting out of the inlet out into the open ocean. But realize that program really is underfunded, and we really appreciate the extra funds we got last year to clean out the Cedar Bush Cut and channel to Jacksonville, because that sand was disposed of in the Phase 1 area at no cost to the town, and it really protected the north end from flooding to a certain degree. So that was the good news from that meeting. Other than that, thank you.
Alderman Fontana?
I also want to thank everybody for attendance here and online. And I'm going to be short. I just want to take a minute to talk about social media. With the upcoming election, it is obviously being used more and more, and it seems to be the main way people are getting information out. But I've seen a disturbing trend. Many of the posts have been personal attacks on the mayor and other board members sitting here today. Let's all agree to use social media as a way to present the issues that are important to the voters of the town of North Topsail Beach, and not as a way to personally attack individuals. I don't think it does anybody any good to criticize people. I mean, we all have our good points and bad points and history, but let's just stick to the issues that affect everybody, and that's all I've got.
Thank you, sir.
I'll keep it really brief.
Really?
Went to the county meeting. They've got a new interim county manager. They were sworn in this morning. Went to the Onwassa board meeting. It looks like the plurus is approved. I guess the LGC just came back and approved that. They're looking to raise $50 million in bonds. Frankie was up there, and what's scary to me is they're talking 5 to 5.5% on tax-free bonds, which tells me borrowing is going to go. I mean, that's probably 7 or 8% for us, Caitlin, at least, if that's 5%. And their budget, and this is public information, their budget, they're going to have to come up with $250 million over the next 5 years for infrastructure for the water and sewer. Pretty scary. Thanks for putting up with my presentation. Yeah.
All right, and I just want to echo everybody's comments today. I appreciate all the time that went into the packet. I appreciate everything the town staff has done. I appreciate y'all sticking with us. I know it was a long meeting, so thank you so much. And I am going to, actually, I did that out of order. That's okay. I'm going to ask for a motion to go into closed session.
Motion to go into closed session?
Second.
All in favor?
Can we have just one
Yeah.
item of discussion first? Brian, would you, there seems to be confusion about what we're allowed to do and decisions we're allowed to make in there. Would you please go on the record and explain to people
Oh, for
that-
closed session.
about what a closed session does?
Well, there's probably 6 grounds you can go into closed session. The most frequent ones are to consult with an attorney employed by the town to preserve the attorney-client privilege. You can go in there to address personnel matters, which are confidential by law. You can go into closed session to direct staff as to a position to be taken in negotiating a contract.
But no decision.
No decisions. Well, any consensus reached in closed session, depending on the nature of it. Now, you can make decisions regarding settling lawsuits or a decision on what you're willing to pay for a piece of property, but given that that's negotiations,
And it becomes public record.
ultimately, but personnel decisions are generally confidential with the exception of certain things like raises or things of that nature.
That's okay, and Brian's going to want to read the statutes that goes into why we're going into the one today.
Yes, ma'am. North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11, subsection A3 and subsection A6, to preserve the attorney-client privilege and to discuss specific personnel.
Okay, so we'll take a 5-minute break and then we'll go into closed session. Session.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we raise the manager's salary to $150,000 effective on the anniversary of her employment,
2023.
2023.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?